3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, Tara Thomas, Waterloo Schools Director of School and Community Relations. I so enjoy a couple times a month when I get to come on KBBG and really spread the word about all the wonderful things we have going on in our district. And that extends to staff training and how we really believe in diversity and inclusion, not just putting lip service to it, but trying to implement some strategies and support for our staff, many of whom have probably grown up in parts of Iowa that were not as diverse as what we're seeing across our schools. At last check, we're up to over 30 different languages being spoken among the over 11,000 students in Waterloo schools. So it makes perfect sense that we cast our net wide to expose our staff to the appropriate training that really fosters an environment where cultural competency is king. And that brings us to our guest for at least part of this half hour. Ruben Carrion, interesting gentleman, has a long history, over 20 years, is that right, at Hawkeye Community College, by way of coming here from Bolivia as an exchange student many years ago, and then for some crazy reason thinking, wow, I can endure these winters, I'm going to stay. So welcome.
Thank you, Tara. Good morning.
Tell me about your work and how you came to be doing what you do at Hawkeye.
Well, I came to the community many years ago, as I said, as an exchange student, and being in that situation, I completed my high school and continued into college. And I was always interested in education. I wanted to be a teacher, counselor, or something like that. So I completed my graduate work at UNI and proceeded to seek jobs, and ended up at Hawkeye as a counselor, advisor at first, and now I run the Career Student Support Services program, and that also gives me the opportunity to be in the classroom. And I teach two courses, both at Hawkeye and Waterloo College.
Tell us about the courses you teach.
I teach a course called Diversity in America, Multicultural Education, and a new course that I developed called Becoming a Global Citizen.
That sounds very interesting and appropriate, because Waterloo Schools, really our theme is global thinking, limitless choices, and that's where it makes perfect sense that you've been brought into the fold in terms of some training opportunities. So talk about how you came to be involved with Waterloo Schools.
Well, I was approached by Bev Smith. Dr. Smith asked me to design something that connects the changing demographics that we were going through many years ago, and we continue to do that in the community, and to foster some kind of relationship and awareness to the community that this is something that is here to stay, and we have to recognize it and be proactive and become competent in the cultural and language issues that people bring to the community, and of course to our schools.
So tell me how this has taken shape. What has your involvement been specifically with implementing some of your work and your knowledge to really connect it back to our teachers?
Sure. What I do is provide a training / workshop, should we say, for the support staff that's newly hired to work in the schools as paraeducators and other support staff. And what I do in my workshop is actually more of a conversation, initiate the conversation among the group, rather than me telling them what they need to do. I think all of them are pretty well prepared in a very dedicated group of wanting to help the students. I do use my personal experience as being a product of Waterloo Schools, being through 9th grade through 12th grade, and I do share what it was like for me, coming from another culture, learning a new language, and the experience that I had. I was very fortunate that I had many people that helped me through that process to be successful, as I see many of the support staff and teachers that do that for our students. So recognizing that diversity that we have now and the changing demographics, not only of our community, but the country in general, and of course our schools, to me is very important. It's close to my heart to connect with people and tell them about my experience.
If you're just joining us, this is Tara Thomas with Waterloo Schools. You're hearing the voice of Ruben Carrion. He's a local, longtime Hawkeye Community College employee, teacher, and somebody who's really championing the diversity and inclusion argument, or at least message, I should say, locally. And he did come years ago as an exchange student from Bolivia to Waterloo and has stuck around. So what was that like? Tell us about coming here, starting 9th grade in Waterloo, having known nothing prior other than life in Bolivia.
Well, as you may expect, you know, you go through that cultural shock, and you see everything as different, and the language was, of course, a big difficulty for me. But the host family that I had was kind enough to take care of my needs and said, you know, you're going to go to school, so we're going to take you, and they're going to put you in the grade that you should be. Through my first 2-3 weeks, I was completely lost. People were kind in directing me where I needed to go, but I just sat there trying to understand and figure out what was going on. It didn't take me very long, however. The people that really helped me were the paraeducators, the student teachers, and the staff in general, to make my life a little more comfortable and make that transition. In the process, however, I had to relearn English. I thought I knew some, and I could get by, but I didn't. In Iowa, we have an accent, and we use many expressions that when you learn in English, you almost have to learn again. In one instance, a student teacher from UNI came to me and said, at the sessions, individual sessions that we had, Ruben, today we're going to talk about the Civil War, and before we do that, would you like a pop? And I always carried a little dictionary with me and tried to find the word pop. And when I found the translation in Spanish, it had many things that word meant. And I looked at her, and what do you think I said to her? I said, no, thank you. And she was all excited about it. She said, well, you know, I'm going to go get a pop, come back, and we're going to get started. And I looked through that dictionary again, tried to find the word pop and the context that she meant, and I could not figure out.
And that must have been, so in your mind, pop was like getting punched, perhaps?
It had references like that in the translation, something that explodes, like in popcorn and things. You know, I said, what is she going to bring? What's going to happen to me? Needless to say, 2 days later, she asked me the same question. And since nothing bad happened the first time, I accepted the invitation. And when she brought back a can of 7-Up, I was relieved to know that pop meant a refreshment or a can of soda.
That's great, and clearly in our country we have so many references even for soda.
Yes.
The tonic, they call it out east, and being an Illinois person, that was a new one on me when I was out in the East Coast. So you're absolutely right about the English having a Midwestern twist for Iowans. So talk about how we're doing today. You've come a long way on both sides of the coin, being both a student new to the area and now somebody who can help guide those instructors and support staff who are new to the schools, and some of the diversity that you mentioned is definitely in play in our schools and in our whole area around eastern Iowa. What needs to be done better? How can we improve the relations among people from different backgrounds? Well,
I tend to take a practical approach. I think the story that I shared with you, I present that to the groups that I work with, and many laugh about the experience. But when it happened to me, it wasn't funny at first. But I think that's happening today, as we speak in the schools. How we communicate, how we treat, how we perceive others, it is important. And I think that sends a message that if we don't prepare ourselves for situations as mine, and perhaps some other ones that are more serious and more involved in the teaching and learning process, I don't think we've been fair. We're not connecting with the students the way we should. So that's my way of understanding and embracing and celebrating and valuing that diversity that we have in our schools, and understanding those little differences, the expressions we use, and once we open those doors, I think we open the doors to the more serious issues that we have, both in our community and the country in general.
are we doing a better job of accepting those differences? If you came here today from Bolivia, as you did all those years ago, would you have had an easier time acclimating to the student body, the culture? I mean, are we better at that level of inclusion?
I think so, definitely. I think the schools are better prepared for students like me. I think the teachers and the support staff have the competencies, and from time to time we have to be reminded of that. I don't think it's something that we have to say, you know, we know how to do this already, and we don't need to do it again. Diversity is very dynamic. It comes in many ways. If it's not culture, it's language, it's lifestyle, it's age, it's gender and everything. So we have to prepare ourselves for that, and we have to continually revisit that topic to, again, continue learning from each other and embrace, and not only embrace, but valuing the differences that we bring to the schools.
If you're just joining us, this is Tara Thomas with Waterloo Schools. You're hearing the voice of Ruben Carrion, a local longtime Hawkeye Community College teacher, as well as diversity and inclusion educator, and we are discussing how Waterloo Schools and all of our support staff can really best meet the needs of all of our students, and that includes among the more than 11,000, many of whom are speaking different languages in the home. We have over 30 languages and multiple dialects that are making up the student body in Waterloo. So meeting the needs of all the students means sometimes giving that extra nudge of support and training so that those that are directly connected to these students can make them feel welcome and maximize their educational experience. Ruben, will there come a time when maybe decades, perhaps hopefully not that long, but will this need for diversity and inclusion not really be an issue because we'll sort of all get there collectively?
Ideally, I think we all want that, but I think it is important for us to practice what we preach, you know, to be lifelong learners and to stay up to date with other things that we may need to learn. And like I said, diversity comes in many ways, and we should continue exploring that.
So give somebody a suggestion or some advice. If I'm out and about in Waterloo, or I'm interacting with somebody from a different background, perhaps somebody whose accent gives away that English is his or her second language, how can I make that extra gesture or step of welcoming and supportive acceptance?
Well, I think the simple gesture of saying hello, or learning some of the greetings in other languages, like we have the Bosnian community here, the Hispanic community, and many other new immigrants. Make an effort to learn at least the greetings, and make that eye contact and say, "Hola, Ruben," which is how you would say my name and the greeting in Spanish. And I will turn around and probably smile and greet you back in English, or maybe in Spanish too. So that's one practical thing to do. Another one is to visit the different stores that we have in the community, the foods, try different foods that we have, perhaps the events that are happening in the community, like the Culture Fest coming up in April. I think that's a wonderful way of embracing and valuing the diversity that we have in the community.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned Culture Fest, because I know Waterloo Schools is a big part of that, and we really appreciate the thousands of people who are showing up for that big event every year. So at this point, I just have to say gracias, Ruben. We appreciate your time, despite maybe butchering that accent a bit there. So don't go anywhere, because in the next part of our half hour, we're going to talk with the wonderful principal that many of you are familiar with, Audrey Wallaken Green at Kittrell Elementary, and hear all the exciting things going on in her building. So stay with us.